Hey everybody, it is your boy, Baseman Awakens, checking in with you for the newest video on my YouTube channel. Today's video, the topic is, does the church keep women single? And this is actually a two-part video I'm going to be doing. Not two-part, but the video is going to be broken into two parts. First, addressing whether or not does the church keep single women single? And then secondly, does the church actually end up negatively impacting marriages and long-term relationships? In my opinion, which I'm going to break down to you over the next couple of minutes, is yes to both. And it's interesting, this topic popped into my head because I had the opportunity. My fiance and I attended a wedding ceremony yesterday, and it was a beautiful ceremony. We were both extremely happy for the couple. They look like they are a great match, but there was so many things that I observed, particularly with the women there, the single women there, that I just had to make this video. So again, the wedding inspired me to make this video, but also one of my fiance's friends, who is actually related to the groom, that's her younger brother, also both put together. This made me like, wow, this is the perfect topic to talk about. So background, my fiance's friend is actually in her mid-30s, but she's actually been single for a very, very long time. But it's her ultimate goal, as with most women, that she wants to get married, have kids, white picket fence, blah, blah, blah. But she's been perpetually single. Now, this is a woman that I don't know very well. I've only met her, I think, twice before. But being at the wedding and the fact that we all sat at the same table gave me a lot of insight into her, and just the situation of a lot of women, particularly Black women within the church. Now, I personally believe, as I stated before, that the church keeps many women single. And the reason why is that, in understanding, particularly women that are like over age 25, who are grown adults, the church becomes their symbolic man, right? Because understanding male and female relationships or dynamics, a woman's looking for a man to lead her. And when she's perpetually single, many women will go into the church and become extremely committed to the church because the church is their symbolic man, right? In most cases, the church is being led by a man who is of means, that has status, that dresses nice. So when the woman commits herself to that church, she's actually committing herself to that man, right? So if she's going beyond just going on Sundays, she's going to Bible study, she's volunteering, she's doing all these other things, and she's actively listening to what the pastor is telling her, whether on Sundays or during one-on-one conversations or during Bible study. Again, he represents that symbolic man. The church represents that symbolic man, which means that if there's any dude that's seriously interested in dating her, he would have to compete with the church, which is her quote-unquote man. And I think that's a huge part of the reason why my fiance's friend is actually single. And there's other aspects to it too, right? Like, let's face it, if you're a aware man, you will know that the church is where these quote unquote fast women, of course, there's other phrases that we could use for it, but I'll just stick with the word fast, go to retire, supposedly retire and reinvent themselves. So if you're a man that's, looking for a serious relationship and you have some level of awareness, you'll peep game very quickly and become very discerning with the type of woman that you're dealing with. And then also, if you are a man that has a leadership type of mindset, and in my opinion, being a leader is not necessarily about having people following you or having a title, but leadership is about knowing who you are and where you want to go, then you're also going to have some not necessarily positive emotions towards the church, because most men are not going to voluntarily submit or put themselves in a situation where they're going to be submitting to another man. And whether anyone wants to admit it or not, when you're a man and you bring your family or yourself to a church, and you're submitting yourself to another man. And men who are aware and men who tend to have leadership qualities tend not to agree with those things, aka why you don't see me or my fiance in church, which I will explain in another video. All right, so I think I need to go a little bit deeper into this, right? So I gave you that. I started with the foundation about what the church is, which is being a symbolic man, and then talking about what a man would have to do to compete with the church, aka another man, right? So going back to it, at the wedding, we were sitting at a table. The table was probably filled with like 8 or 9 people, including myself and my fiance. I'm the only man there. We're also sitting with my fiance's close friend, and most of the other people who were sitting at the table were either her female relatives or close friends. They're single, all single women. And of course, I'm sitting back. I'm like, there's no masculine energy here. And I'm just observing the conversations that they're having. And I'm like, this is another aspect of why the church keeps women single. Because for one, the church is filled in the Black community, the church is mostly filled with single women. But the bad part about this is that single women refuse to tell each other the truth about themselves. What they'll do is just reinforce a delusional worldview in terms of their behavior and their expectations. And I noticed that on display where, for example, I got introduced to my fiance's friend's aunt. Now, this woman is in her late 50s, early 60s, single. Has been single for decades, not a long time, decades. And this woman, when I got introduced to her, she was telling me, like, I'm so proud of your fiance. I'm so proud of my niece. I've been telling them since they were young about the things that they need to do to find a good man and to get the proper way to get married. And I'm thinking to myself, you've been single for your entire life. You never got married and you never had kids. So I'm like, who are you to be telling people, giving people advice about things that you've never experienced yourself? But I noticed that kind of echo chamber is very, very common in churches, particularly Black churches with these single women. And then also understanding that humans are naturally competitive creatures and we always want to one up each other. That's another negative aspect about being in the church and being around these single women is that in many situations, they'll intentionally give each other bad advice so her friend can stay in the same misery as she's in. And I also noticed that on display. So, I mean, that pretty much breaks down part one, right? Why a single woman remains single. Now, I want to go into part two of this, which is my belief that in many situations, the church actually ends up destroying marriages or actually breaking up long-term relationships. And I'm not trying to say this is across the board, right? Because in many churches you go to, you'll see two-parent families, kids, and all that. But I'm saying in specific cases, if the family members don't learn how to maintain proper boundaries, particularly the man doesn't know how to conduct himself and his family in that particular institution. I think we need to acknowledge that church, for the most part, is actually just a form of entertainment. It's a place where people can socialize. It's a place where people can feel better about themselves and people can be entertained. That's what it is. Many people out there will argue me and say, "Oh, well, it's a place where you can worship the Lord." Yeah, but if you read the Bible, there's nothing written in the Bible that says you need to go to church to have a relationship with your God or Jesus or however you want to describe it. And we also need to take a look at the church from another perspective in terms of male and female behavior. Women are primarily driven by their emotions. Men should be, and unfortunately, in society we're living, it's not as true as it should be. Men should be driven by logic. So when a man brings his family or significant other to a church, he should be able to see the church for what it is. And then in understanding that men should be driven by logic, that means that the man should be the head of the household. And as I was stating before, the church, if you bring your family to the church or you go to the church by yourself as a man, you're submitting yourself to the leadership of another man, which means there's going to be a natural conflict between what is coming out the pastor's mouth and what the man thinks he should be doing for his family. And I've observed this within my own family, other people's families, or just in church in general, where in my opinion, the pastor is talking a whole bunch of BS because, again, the pastor is not going to hold women accountable for their behavior. So he's out there constantly blaming men or saying stuff, talking about things that are going on in the community that's not true or half truth or built in fantasy. The women are eating that stuff up. In many cases, the men are like, I don't agree with this. But over time, or once they leave church, because the man is thinking logically and the woman's thinking about her emotions, and much of what's discussed in church is built in fantasy, in certain situations, the conflict will arise. And again, going back to this idea, right? And I've seen it, and it's so bad, where I've seen situations where women actually ended up becoming more committed to the church, which is their symbolic man, than their own husband or their long-term partners, which is like extremely disrespectful and emasculating to that man. Let's face it, if a woman's spending like cooking food, bringing it to church, but she don't cook for her own husband, she's over here giving pastor money or donations, but does she give her own husband or her man money, her hard-earned money? No. So what are you saying in those situations? You're saying that that symbolic man, the church, the pastor, however you want to describe it, is more important than your own partner. And I've seen situations where the relationship ended up failing or they started to have serious problems because the woman continued to go to church. The man didn't. The man didn't agree with pastor. In certain situations, the pastor was disrespectful to her husband or her long-term partner, where he's either spoke to him like he was a child or flirted or did some sexual activity with this man's wife. And that's extremely emasculating, and those type of actions do lead to problems. So I sit there and say that I think in certain situations that the church can keep women single or ensure that women who are married will get divorced or their long-term relationships will break up because the church is basically a symbolic man. In our society or in our culture, God is a man, right? Jesus is a man. So when you are worshiping when you're going to church, you're not, I don't care what anyone says, you're not really worshiping God, you're worshiping whoever's leading that church. And in most cases, that's a dude. So you're worshiping another man. So in my opinion, for men who are natural leaders or have more of a leadership ability, there's always going to be that natural conflict between yourself, your family, and that church because you should be the leader of your family. You should be the leader of your relationship. And not to say that we shouldn't be open to taking advice from other people. Yes, we should be. I'm a firm believer in constructive criticism and seeking out other sources of information. But at the end of the day, the man should be the leader in his relationship, and his wife should be putting all her energy and all her admiration and her money into him, not some other man, not symbolic man, not pastor, not reverend, not anyone. And those are my thoughts. If you guys agree, smash the like button, share, and comment, and be on the lookout for more videos. Baseman Awaken.